Welcome everyone to the Ready for the Draft podcast. I am your host, Gregg Schutze. This is episode 3 of the 2022 podcast series where we take a look at the draft eligible prospects and get you ready for the NFL draft. And we're only a few weeks away from the college football season. It actually kicks off the weekend of August 28th, and then Labor Day weekend, we actually have a full slate of games, which means we are officially in the preseason. And I'd like to take a look at each position during the preseason and really put out my top 10 at each position, along with a few other players sprinkled in that you need to keep an eye on throughout the season. So last week we started with the quarterbacks. This week will be the running backs. Now, just to recap on the quarterbacks, we know that Spencer Rattler, Sam Howell are going to be the top 2 quarterbacks, at least coming into the season. And right now they're favored to probably be top 5 picks. Houston Texans probably going to be on the clock more than likely. They're going to be looking for a quarterback, especially with the Deshaun Watson situation. So it'll be interesting to see what happens at the top of the draft, especially when we're talking about the quarterbacks. Number 3, that's really going to be the big question. Who is it going to be? In my eyes, my number 3 quarterback is Carson Strong out of Nevada. I see him right now as the guy. If there's going to be a group of 5 quarterback with a meteoric rise like Zach Wilson, it's going to be Carson Strong. I love the accuracy, the big playability with his arm. You know, he's more of a pocket passer. But look, you know, we saw teams aren't afraid to go after that pocket passer. Look at Mac Jones this past season going number 15 overall. After that, number 4, Malik Willis out of Liberty, supremely athletic. We know that. I want to see him take the next step as a passer. First year really as a starter since 2016 when he was in high school. I want to see what Malik Willis can do taking that next step. Can he really be the guy that you can, rely on with his arm down the stretch? Key for him. Because the guy that's going to be chomping on his heels is the guy that's number 5 in my book, and that's Matt Corral out of Ole Miss. This is a guy, it's kind of a Jekyll and Mr. Hyde. He's definitely a gunslinger and a guy who can be phenomenal. When he's on his A game, he's as good as anybody in the country. But he also has those games where he's just absolutely awful. So if he can really hone things in and have a consistent season, watch out for Matt Corral rising up draft boards. Number 6, Kedon Slovis out of USC, he's another guy. Which quarterback are we going to get? Are we going to get the talented 2019 freshman that came in? A guy that just was gripping it and ripping it? Are we going to see the 2020 kid who really struggled at times? The patience. He was forced to really, try to attack zones on the outside. Really wasn't giving the defense, taking what the defense was giving him, essentially because all the routes were being run to the outside. Suddenly, the light bulb went on. Fourth quarter, they had to score points, and that playbook for the first 3 quarters kind of got thrown out the window, and suddenly USC was moving the football, and suddenly Kedon Slovis looked a lot sharper. That fourth quarter quarterback is why he's sitting there at number 6 right now. But he's one of those guys that's really, he's got to put forth a tremendous season. And a lot of that has to go to the supporting cast, namely Graham Harrell. Graham Harrell's got to, hey, you've got the air raid, but look, LSU, SEC, Mike Leach, you saw what Mississippi State did to the Tigers. Then the blueprint right after that was, let's just run zone against them. And you saw what Mississippi State did in the SEC after that. SC, with a lot of the same struggles, they did end up winning the games, but ultimately it was because they're playing against inferior competition. In my opinion, those were teams that they should not have been down to. And ultimately, at the end of the day, they had to make things up and really make some plays. That's really, I want to see that fourth quarter Kedon Slovis. Number 7 on my list, JT Daniels out of Georgia. And the thing with JT Daniels, we've seen different cats here with him as well. Freshman season, we saw really an inconsistent kid, under 60% passing, a lot of mistakes as a true freshman. Sophomore season, tears his knee up in the first game. And at the end of the first half against Fresno State, that's ultimately what propelled Kedon Slovis into the starting role. He transfers to Georgia, 4 games, 3 of the 4 really against inferior competition. But I like the way that he led the Bulldogs to the victory over Cincinnati, 24-23 in the bowl game. So there's not really a whole body of work for JT Daniels, but here's another guy. He's just like Mac Jones in terms of being just a real cerebral quarterback. He's a eats, drinks, sleeps, and just soaks in football. And a kid who puts together his own playbooks. And so I'm really looking forward to seeing what JT Daniels could do. He could be a riser if he puts forth, a tremendous season there in the SEC. After that, number 8, Desmond Ridder. Here's a kid, over 2,800 yards in each of his 3 seasons there with the Bearcats, 4-year starter. What makes me nervous about Desmond Ridder is, a lot of the times down the stretch for Cincy, he was relying on his legs, and I just want to see him take that next step as a passer. I know that he has the arm strength, he has the ability. I just want to see him ultimately put everything together as a passer, find those open receivers down the field. He's got a talented tight end. He's got some talented receivers. And, he doesn't have Jared Dokes to really lean on. So I'm hoping that we get to see him, especially in crunch time, air some footballs out. Let's really get things going for Desmond Ridder. And hopefully he can start moving up some draft boards as well. Number 9 on my list, Phil Dracovic out of BC looks a lot like Big Ben, but again, another guy who's, the consistency just isn't there. I also want to see him really stand tall in the pocket and be strong with it. Whenever he is under pressure, you're going to see him fade back quite a bit and just retreating, especially when he's rolling out, giving up a lot of ground. You do that in the NFL against defenders who are running 4.4s and 4.5s, you're going to get sacked and you're going to lose a lot of yardage. So I need him to take that next step and really be focused down the field as much as possible and not be giving up yardage more often than not. And then at number 10, there are a lot of guys vying for that position, and no offense to Caleb Ellaby or Kenny Pickett. Right now my guy is Brock Purdy out of Iowa State. I think he deserves to be in the list. I think he's more of a game manager, not physically imposing by any means, but a guy who just gets the job done. I think he's a guy that you could see end up making a team, probably going to be a later round draft pick, but a guy who I think could make a team, be a nice backup for a program. Needs to cut down on some mistakes, needs to work on the arm strength a little bit. Right now he's at number 10, but he's got to put forth another big season if Iowa State wants to move forward and really be considered among the top. Look, they're ranked number 7 in the country, the highest that they've ever been in the preseason. Big part of that is Brock Purdy, so that's why I still have him in my top 10. So that is kind of a recap of the quarterbacks. Now we're focusing on the running backs. And it's interesting that I left off with Iowa State's quarterback, and I'll be leading in with Iowa State's running back as we talk about the running back class. Now, we talk about the running back position, and I think a lot of what the game is going towards today is a lot of the passing attacks, and is the running game really becoming more and more obsolete or irrelevant? Look, at the end of the day, if you need to grind out time, you're not going to be sitting there throwing the football around the field. You're going to want to run the football, grind the clock out, and really establish a solid running game. So really what you saw in 2014 was the last time we actually didn't see a running back taken in round number 1. Now, in that draft, we had a really underwhelming draft class. Bishop Sankey was the first running back taken there. This was a class, though, that did have Devontae Freeman coming off the board in round number 4. But after that, we actually saw at least one running back taken. And in 4 of the last 7 drafts, we've seen multiple running backs come off the board in round number 1. Going back to 2015, you had Todd Gurley and Melvin Gordon in the top 15 picks. 2016, Ezekiel Elliott coming off the board, number 4 overall. Think about this. In that draft, you had Derrick Henry, number 45 overall in the 2nd round. So you can get running backs later on in the draft. I'm just saying. So then you move on to 2017. That was Leonard Fournette, Christian McCaffrey, Dalvin Cook, Joe Mixon, Alvin Kamara, Kareem Hunt, James Conner. These were all guys that were taken later on in the draft. Cook, Mixon in round 2, Kamara, Hunt in in the 3rd round, and then on day 3, we actually had Jamal Williams come off the board there to the Packers. So again, you're seeing some of that pattern. You have some guys at the top, but there are going to be guys that you can land in round number 2. Hey, how about 2018? Saquon Barkley, number 2 overall. We know the type of stud that he is. Rachaad Penny, kind of a surprise there at 27 going to the Seahawks, and then Sony Michel rounded things out, 31 overall. His teammate, Nick Chubb, 3rd pick of the 2nd round, and we know the type of player that Nick Chubb is for the Cleveland Browns. Ronald Jones, winning a Super Bowl with the Bucs, he came off the board in round 2 as well. So again, you're seeing that pattern. Not only are guys coming off the board in round 1 making a difference, but guys later on in the draft. You're going to continue to see the trend. 2019, Josh Jacobs, the only running back off the board there, number 24 overall. Devin Singletary comes off the board in round 3, as does David Montgomery. Darrell Henderson getting his shot there with the Rams now. You fast forward 2020, Clyde Edwards-Helaire, last pick in round number 1 going to the Chiefs. But hey, Jonathan Taylor, Devontae Swift, Cam Akers, J.K. Dobbins, A.J. Dillon, all taken in round number 2. Zach Moss in round 3. So really a lot of depth there in 2020. And then this last draft, Najee Harris and Travis Etienne going back-to-back, 24 and 25 to the Steelers and Jaguars. Javonte Williams coming off the board in round 2. So it's going to be interesting to see what that draft class looks like, because I think you've got from Michael Carter to the Jets in round 4 to Chuba Hubbard towards the end of round 4 going to the Panthers. He's looked good in preseason. I think Elijah Mitchell from Louisiana in the 6th round could carve out a niche there for the 49ers. Look, Larry Roundtree for the Chargers in round 6. He's another guy who I think can end up making some plays and making that roster as well. So again, when you look at the draft class, you look at the running backs, even though you want to talk about the running backs not being as relevant, you had 20 running backs taken in this last draft. So they're definitely still important. So we do need to pay attention to this running back class, just like we do each and every year. But I'll tell you what, there are a couple of guys that I'm really looking at the top of this draft as potential first-round picks. And the first one for me is a guy that, if he continues along the path that he's on, he's going to be an absolute first-rounder, probably in the 20s, possibly come off the board right at the end of round number 1. But that's Breece Hall out of Iowa State. Look, 6'1", 215 pounds. If you look at the stats, last season, over 1,500 yards on the ground, 21 touchdowns, 46 receptions in his career. 6 in the Heisman voting in 2020. He has 900-yard games, back-to-back 185 yards versus Oklahoma State and Kansas. A touchdown in every game, 8 with multi-rushing touchdowns, 7 multi-reception games, only 2 games without a reception. This is a kid who just continues to get better and better, the more you watch the game, to be honest with you. And he's 6'1", 215. He's got a bigger frame, and I saw a video of him this offseason, and man, he's looking chiseled. And I really hope that from a physicality standpoint, he's going to bring that to the table, because he's more of a finesse running back. You look at a guy his size, he's not overly powerful. And that's one of the things I think I really want to see him add to his game, is the ability to really light guys up, because I think that's just going to add to that versatility. You look at Najee Harris. Najee Harris was a guy that was going to run by you, run over you, jump over you. Nick McLeod. So he did a little bit of everything, and that's really what I want to see with Breece Hall, taking that next step. But one of the things that you can absolutely say without a doubt is Breece Hall, the vision. He's a patient runner. He waits for his blocks to develop. He doesn't overextend himself and get ahead of his blocks. He really lets those blocks develop, and then the vision to see those holes, put his foot in the ground, be decisive, and then that quick burst, that acceleration through the hole. And then once he does that, his ability he does have good contact balance. I think he runs with a low pad level. He is able to bounce off tackles, spin off tackles a little bit. But then that game-breaking speed. He had multiple runs over 50 yards this past season. He had a 75-yard touchdown against TCU, nice stop and start that ran away from the defense. Downhill runner at times. But what I love, against Kansas, had a stutter on the left, make a man miss, takes off to the right, and gets to the outside to score. So that's one of the things too, that speed, allowing him to reverse field when he needs to. That acceleration, that's one of the things that you love to see. The vision to pick his way through traffic, the hands as a receiver. I mentioned the number of receptions, 46 receptions in his career. A guy who I think he's decent as a route runner. I think there are better route runners in this draft class, but gained 20 pounds prior to the 2020 season, and he looks even bigger this year. So again, I'm hoping that he gets more physical with that. But look, I love his ability to press the line of scrimmage, quick feet, jump cuts, bouncing it to the outside, and then accelerating away from the defense. He does. I mentioned the lack of physicality, but he does absorb a lot of the hits to his legs, so he does have some power in those legs. But I really want to see him elevate that. If he does, I think Breece Hall has a great chance of being a first-round pick, and he's my number one running back in this draft class. I think there's really no question whatsoever. Number 2 is going to be Isaiah Spiller out of Texas A&M. Look, another kid, 6'1", 215. The junior had a 1,000-yard season in 2020 and just missed a 1,000-yard season as a true freshman in 2019. Fell short by just 54 yards. Look, 19 touchdowns in his career. What I also like, the 49 receptions. Shows good hands coming out of the backfield. At one point was the leading rusher in the SEC. One of the things, 10 100-yard rushing games, has had 6 multi-receiving games, including 6 against Tennessee this past season. If you look at him as a freshman, actually had 10 games with with more than 1 reception as well. He's more of a physical runner. I think he enjoys the contact. He's going to run through those arm tackles. He's going to drop that pad level and run over guys to finish. Another guy who really does a good job pressing the line of scrimmage, then showing the ability to make those cuts and run to daylight. Like the physicality with his blocking, but I think at times he'll show up late. Especially there was a DB block or DB blitz against South Carolina. Missed that block. Showed up late and ended up whiffing on the block. But he there is effort there. He is physical. I just want to see him continue to be consistent there. Ball security at times, can get careless with the football. Got stripped by Zacoby McClain when they played against Auburn. Definitely a downhill runner. He's going to has that leg drive, getting through contact. Is going to continue to fall forward. Runs with a definite, runs behind his pad. Definite, forward momentum. Always seems to be falling forward. And to me, he has that speed. I don't think it's elite. He'll probably run in the 4.5s, probably high 4.5s, but still a guy who is dynamic both between the tackles, and he'll make you miss on the outside. And then what I love is just the hands. For a running back of his size, you get him outside and you allow him to go ahead and make some plays, and does a really good job making the first man miss in the open field. Number 3 on my list, I'm going to stay in the SEC here for a couple of picks. And, number 3 is Zamir White out of Georgia. Look, 6', 215. This junior has a chance to continue to move up draft boards. And the thing with it is Georgia right now, and they've just been known for what we saw with Sony Michel and Nick Chubb. You can just go through really Georgia's history, and they don't really have one bell cow running the football. They're going to use more of a committee, but Zamir White, I think, has really emerged as the guy for the Bulldogs. Look, a season ago, had over 700 yards on the ground, 5.4 yards per carry, 11 touchdowns. Wasn't much of a factor in the passing game. I'd like to see him develop some rapport there with JT Daniels. Did have 300-yard games against Florida. Look, just 7 carries for 107 yards and a touchdown. That's 15.3 yards per carry. The lateral agility in the hole to avoid linebackers, get to the outside. That's something that I think is borderline elite. Making guys miss in the hole, really being able to create. That's something that you want to see, especially at the next level. Lowers those pad levels to finish. What I love, he reads the blocks. Blocked down by the right tackle, right guard comes around. able to follow his blockers. Against Florida, safety comes down in the box, off tackle run, able to cut inside the defensive back on the edge, and then the speed to go the distance. Made just one guy miss in the open field, kind of made him look silly. 75-yard touchdown. Another patient runner, waiting for those holes to open up. Has the physicality between the tackles, and then has the speed on the outside. I think Zamir White is poised to have a huge season. If he does, he's a guy that could challenge for potential first-round slot, or be one of those guys coming off the board early in round 2, a la Nick Chubb. Number 4 on the list is a guy that a lot of people aren't talking about. I'm really surprised, and that's Kevin Harris out of South Carolina. 5'11", 225 pounds. The junior is an absolute physical beast, especially between the tackles. Very physical at the point of attack. If you watch that Auburn game, delivered a huge hit to Smoke Monday as Smoke came up to make the tackle. You look at him though, and you're like, all right, there's no way this guy has that home run speed. But if you watch the game against Vandy, safety came down in the box, followed his fullback into the hole. Adam Prentice made a nice block, outran the safety on an 88-yard touchdown. There's also a perimeter run to the boundary later on in the season. I think it was against Ole Miss. Stiff arm on the DB, able to get to the end zone. Shows off that counter play also against Ole Miss. Into the boundary, speed to go the distance, 45 yards as well. So the speed is absolutely there against Ole Miss as well. Outside zone, cut inside off the block, and was gone, 46 yards as well. So, even though you look at him, you see the power in his game, this is a guy who has the speed to go the distance. What I also loved was his ability to catch the football out of the backfield. Angle route against Florida. Linebacker overcommits to the sideline, puts his foot in the ground, crosses the face of the linebacker, wide open for the catch and the score. It was just beautiful. And you watch that again and again. There was a swing pass, 3rd and 3, I think it was against Vandy, hit by the DB on the perimeter, spun away and got up the field for 5 yards, showed good hands, and really able to absorb the impact, kept that low center of gravity, able to keep his balance off the contact and get down and get positive yardage. Here's the thing. Kevin Harris, first game in a Gamecocks uniform, 145 yards and 3 touchdowns against Charleston Southern. In 2020, really emerged as really South Carolina's offense. Over 1,100 yards on the ground, 6.2 yards per carry, 15 touchdowns, also had 21 receptions. 5 games over 100 yards as a sophomore, including 2 over the 200 mark, including 246 yards and 5 touchdowns in a losing effort against Ole Miss. He was absolutely phenomenal in that game. Also had 6 games with multiple receptions, including 3 games with 4 receptions. So that he's reliable. The quarterback is comfortable getting him the football. He did struggle against the tougher competition, and some of that it might actually go to the offensive line and the inability to really get anything going. Just 39 yards against the Aggies at Texas A&M and 53 yards against Georgia. But he's a guy that, you got to feed him. And that's one of the things I want to continue to watch him. I want to be able to see if he can elevate that game a little bit further. Show off that speed, be able to make plays. Especially when there isn't anything. That's one of the things that I think elevates that running back. Are you somebody who, when a hole's there, you're going to explode through the hole, but what if nothing's there? Are you able to create? Are you going to be able to make something out of nothing? Those are the types of plays that you really want to see out of some of those special running backs. I think he does have a decent burst, can accelerate outside. I think he has better speed than a lot of people are giving him credit for. I don't think it's elite speed by any means, but Kevin Harris is a guy to watch. He could be somebody that can move up some draft boards real quick. Number 5 on my list is a guy he doesn't really have a position, and that's Ainias Smith out of Texas A&M. At some point, I am going to call him Ainias Williams during the season. I'm just going to call it out now. But Ainias Smith, 5'10", 190 pounds, and look, you can play him a little bit. Play him everywhere. You can play him in the slot. You can split him out, line him up in the backfield. Both he and Spiller were in the backfield at times for the Aggies. He's a kick returner, punt returner. He does a little bit of everything. When you look at his numbers, 65 receptions, let's see, 812 yards and 9 touchdowns. Running the football, 56 carries, 347 yards, 4 touchdowns. And then in the kicking game, a guy who was, I thought, as a punt returner, that's probably where he's going to excel at the next level. Reminds you of Nyheim Hines because he has that ability, that versatility. And I love his game because he can translate to this new age NFL offense. You can line him up literally anywhere and the kid's going to make plays. Soft hands, the lateral agility to make guys miss. The route running is there. He's not the biggest guy by any means, so he's not going to be a bell cow. He's going to be more of a change of direction guy, which is why I was a little hesitant to put him at number 5. But I could see him being a day 2 running back. Look, Nyheim Hines came off the board in round 4. I think a lot of times that's where a running back without a true position could end up falling. So that could be where Ainias Smith comes off the board. But I think there's a great chance that he could be a day 2 guy, especially if A&M has a big year. Look, they're going to have to replace Kellen Mond. That's going to be huge. But if Jimbo Fisher and company can really work with those 2 running backs and they can really feed off of each other, then I think Ainias Smith is poised for a big year. So he's somebody to definitely keep an eye on there in the SEC. A guy that's going to be really right there as well. I actually had him much higher at one point, and that's Kyren Williams out of Notre Dame. 5'9", 195 pounds. Didn't do much as a freshman, only played in a couple of games, but man, as a sophomore, he really stepped up. 1,125 yards on the ground, 13 touchdowns, also had 35 receptions. 6 games over 100 yards, 5 multi-touchdown games, 10 games with multiple receptions, including 8 against Alabama in the playoff. Only 2 games with just 1 reception. So this was a kid continuing to make plays in the passing game for Ian Book as well. One of the things that I look at is, he ran behind an elite offensive line there at Notre Dame. Guys that are getting drafted left and right. Liam Eichenberg isn't there. Robert Hainsey no longer there. Tommy Kramer as well. He does get his center, Jarrett Patterson, back, but you're going to be putting in some new guys. I really want to see what he does there. Also, no Ian Book. Jack Cohn, the transfer coming from Wisconsin, is he going to be able to step in there? He may actually be relied upon a little bit more to get Jack Cohn comfortable with the offense. What I love is he is compact. That balance, the contact balance, you see that absorbing the impact. Very strong between the tackles, though. You're surprised to see that. He doesn't look like the biggest kid, but definitely is strong. Stiff arms at the second level as well. Likes to get north and south in a hurry. He'll look for those stiff arms. He'll look to plant guys whenever possible. Finishes runs with a forward lean. That's another thing that you really like to see. Like I said, contact balance, running through arm tackles at the second level. Has that explosive burst downhill, hitting the hole, and can accelerate away from defenses. A guy who also showed up quite a bit as a pass blocker, picking up the blitz up the middle. Also came across to pick up Balin Spector on a blitz against Clemson, which allowed Ian Book to complete a 27-yard reception. So I think that's one of the, picked up a linebacker blitz, coming across the formation and pass protection against Louisville. So really an intelligent player, a guy who knows where he needs to be, has vision, the vision to see those cutback lanes, can bounce it out and get down the sideline as well. I love the stutters in the hole to make you miss. Does that a little bit too much. Needs to just make sure that he's going downhill and really getting that, getting strong, coming downhill. The route running, though, man, he definitely can get himself open. And once he makes those catches, there's a game, the game against BC, catches a pass over the middle, ducks under the linebacker. Ultimately was a little careless with the football, got the ball punched free, so he sometimes will do a little bit too much, needs to make sure that he's taking care of the football. But I think Kyren Williams really burst onto the scene, and another big year there with the Irish, and I think Kyren Williams could end up entering the draft and be a day 2 pick, a solid day 2 pick there for an NFL franchise. Coming in at number 7, is Bam Knight. Xazavian Knight, 5'11", 206, a junior out of NC State. Back-to-back seasons, over 700 yards on the ground, 15 touchdowns, also had 27 receptions. Bam, as a freshman, 3 games over 100 yards. As a sophomore, just 1 game over 100 yards, but had 4 over 90. Had a reception in 10 of the 12 games, a touchdown in each of his final 6 games as well. If you watch the game against Miami, had a 100-yard kickoff return as well, spun out of a tackle, up the middle, speed, broke the kicker's tackle and showed the speed to the house. So, big kid, he's 5'11", 206, powerfully built, but definitely has the speed to be a home run hitter. Scored a touchdown on his very first carry for NC State. Has that leg drive and balance. He played against ECU, and the leg drive, that contact balance, was able to get an extra 10 yards just carrying defenders. Hurdling defenders at the second level. You see the athleticism there. If he only needs to avoid one defender on the perimeter, he's able to easily juke them to get to the edge. Downhill through the hole, he's going to deliver a blow at the second level. I think he's patient. He'll press the line of scrimmage, he'll get downhill, and then he'll show the speed as well. For me, I just want to see him continue to be a factor in the passing game. I want to see him as a pass blocker. I've mentioned Breece Hall, a solid pass protector. I think Isaiah Spiller is a willing pass protector. You saw Kyren Williams time and time again stepping up in pass protection all over the formation. I want to see Xazavian Knight really elevate his game there. That's really what's going to separate some of those running backs in this draft class. Number 8 for me, I went back and forth between Mohamed Ibrahim and Jerrion Ealy. Ultimately went with Ibrahim here, 5'10", 210, out of Minnesota. Look, this is a guy, as a freshman and a junior, over 1,000 yards on the ground, 31 touchdowns in his career. Not much of a factor in the passing game, just 15 career receptions. But look, as a freshman, had 5 games with 20-plus carries, 5 games over 100 yards, 3 games with multiple touchdowns. His sophomore year, just 604 yards on the ground. That was the year where, really it was Tanner Morgan and that passing attack that really elevated things for the Gophers. He was also splitting time in the backfield, only played in 10 games that year as well. 2020, though, all games, over 20 carries, really was the workhorse for Minnesota. 2 games over 30 carries and had 41 against Maryland, where he had 207 yards on the ground. Went over 100 yards in each of those 7 games, 2 of those eclipsing the 200-yard mark. 5 games with a touchdown, at least. Let's see, have 4 touchdowns against Maryland and Illinois. 3 games. All multi-reception, and he's somebody who shows excellent hands, decent route running as well, picks up blitzes coming off the edge. That was one of the things that you definitely saw. Presses the line of scrimmage, the vision to see the opening to the outside, has some lateral quickness to get there, shows a good burst. He's quicker than he is fast, so he's not going to be a guy that's going to run away from defenses by any means, but when you do get to him, he's a guy that runs angry. He's angry, he's physical, violent runner, and that's really what you're going to get out of Mohamed Ibrahim. Look, he's 5'10", 210. He's gonna get physical with you, and he's somebody who's going to look to run you over whenever he can, and a guy who I think you want to put a game on someone's back. You want to grind out yards and end up getting a victory. Mohamed Ibrahim is the back in this draft class to be able to do that. Jerrion Ealy, I mentioned, was my number 9 guy, 5'8", 190. This guy's a tremendous athlete, also a center fielder on the baseball team. Back-to-back seasons with over 700 yards on the ground, 15 touchdowns in his career, 35 receptions, has 2 career kickoff returns for a touchdown. As a freshman, had 5 games with at least 3 receptions, just 100-yard game, and that was 141 yards in a losing effort to the juggernaut that was LSU. As a sophomore, just 2 games eclipsing the 100-yard mark, had a reception in every game, 4 games with multiple receptions as well. This is a kid, he's got quick feet. I think that's one of the things that you definitely see, but he also doesn't go down easily. The contact balance is there. Low center of gravity makes him very difficult to hit. Look, he's only 5'8", so does a really good job hiding behind his offensive line. look, played against Bama and was one-on-one coming through the B gap against the safety, planted his foot, broke the free safety's ankle on a 9-yard touchdown. It was beautiful. Took the pitch on a 3rd down, got north and south, able to pick up the 1st down, 8 yards there. This was a guy who was able to make guys miss, very elusive in the open field, patient to wait for his blocks, jump cuts to the hole, actually led the SEC for a time there with missed tackles. So just being that elusive, especially in a conference that prides itself on defense, I think that definitely speaks to what Jerrion Ealy is able to do. Really want to see, hopefully Lane Kiffin will allow him to run the football a little bit more. Really be able to, because that Lane Kiffin is going to want to throw the football. Matt Corral, wanting to air things out. But if Mississippi can actually play it from ahead and allow Jerrion Ealy, that's really where I want to see what he can do down the stretch. The team has a lead. Can they rely on Jerrion Ealy to close out a game? That's really the big question mark. To his game, but I think there's a lot to like. He's a guy that, I'm debating with him coming up to number 8. He's a guy that could easily be in my top 5. I actually had him in my top 5 at one point, so he's someone who could definitely move up draft boards without a doubt. Number 10 is a guy that we didn't see last year, and that's Kennedy Brooks out of Oklahoma. 5'11", 214 pounds, back-to-back 1,000-yard seasons for the Sooners, 18 touchdowns in his career, 20 receptions as well, 9 career 100-yard games, 4 multi-TD games, all as a freshman. A 4-reception game in his career against Baylor as well. This is a guy who they're saying is more explosive in 2021, coming back from sitting out due to COVID, and that's going to be scary for the Big 12 and really the nation as a whole, especially if you got Spencer Rattler throwing the football around. Look, this is a guy who I love his lateral quickness, lateral cuts to avoid defenders in space. Quick burst, accelerating through the hole as well. Really does a good job. He's patient. If you watch Oklahoma play, they have this guard tackle pull that they both coming around, and does a really good job following the lead there and being patient to allow them to set up those blocks, and then the burst through the hole and getting downhill. Not really a game breaker in terms of the speed, but definitely has that acceleration and can get into the second level in a hurry. Love his ability to catch the football out of the backfield as well. There's a game against West Virginia, made the catch and secured the football, and then right after he makes the catch, was able to spin out of a tackle and break off a big game to set up 1st and goal for the Sooners. His ability making some guys miss, cutting back inside, really reading the leverage of the defenders and being able to cut off of that. Something that I definitely noticed time and time again as I was watching his tape. Really the question is going to be, where he's at, where the rust, can he shake that off? I want to see him be more of a factor in the passing game. And look, there was a different offense for the Sooners once Ramondre Stevenson came into the fold. And really that elevated things, and they had that rushing attack to go along with the passing attack with Spencer Rattler. I want to see Kennedy Brooks do the same. And look, I thought he was more explosive at times than Trey Sermon was in 2019. Kennedy Brooks was looked at as the starter going into 2020. I think that was the reason why Trey Sermon was looking at, making the jump from OU to Ohio State. He wasn't going to be the starter there at Oklahoma. Ultimately, Kennedy Brooks decides he's going to sit out the season. But I think Kennedy Brooks has a chance to have a big year and potentially enter the draft. He'll be sharing the backfield with Eric Gray, the transfer from Tennessee. 5'11", 205, the junior. Look, he's number 11 on my board right now. And look, in 9 games, had over 700 yards for the Volunteers, had 30 receptions as well. As a sophomore, just 4 games over 100 yards, but had 6 receptions. In 1 game, had at least 3 receptions, including 8 against Georgia and 7 against Florida. 246 yards as a freshman, broke Jamal Lewis's record. Had a 95-yard touchdown against Vanderbilt as well. Can accelerate away from the defense. So there is the big-time speed. You do see that. sets up defensive backs in space, ultimately juking them out, sets them up really well in advance, sees the DB coming down and being able to set them up 2, 3, 4 yards in advance. A lot of head fakes to get guys going and making them miss. Puts that foot in the ground, cuts inside. A lot of times does a really good job making the defenders commit to the outside, and then he'll cut back inside, or make him commit to the inside and he'll cut back to the outside. So those are some of the things that I really like about him. Want to see a little bit more power in his game because you see a lot of the speed, you see the burst. He does do a good job setting up blocks, cuts off those blocks and gets downhill in a hurry. I look at him, you watch him and Kennedy Brooks, and it'll be a lot of fun there for Oklahoma. That rushing attack was really what was lacking last year throughout the first few games of the season. That's why OU started 1-2. If you've got these two guys in the backfield, it's going to be scary for Big 12 opponents. I think that's why OU actually came into the season as a number 2 ranked team in the country, because especially if Alex Grinch has that defense playing, they're going to be tough to beat. CJ Verdell out of Oregon, another kid who, he struggled with injuries in 2020, and that was really the most disappointing thing. Even in 2019, he had some nagging leg injuries, but 2020, broken thumb, missed the Pac-12 championship and the Fiesta Bowl. But prior to the 2020 season, back-to-back 1,000-yard seasons, including 1,220 in 2019, really poised for a huge year in 2020. So, the injury bug was really a disappointment there for him. 21 touchdowns on the ground, also had 50 receptions, so a guy that can catch the football out of the backfield. You love the speed, getting downhill in a hurry, runs through arm tackles, has the speed to take it to the house at any point. Had a 70-yard touchdown, against I think it was Washington State. Had an 89-yard touchdown as well. Good power at the line of scrimmage, breaking arm tackles in the backfield, and the speed to the outside, down the sideline as well. Lateral cuts to avoid defenders in the hole. That's something that I think you want to be able to see. Can you avoid those defenders as they're meeting you in the hole? He's able to do that. Quick change of direction to hit the hole as well. Pretty patient. I think once he finds the hole, he's decisive and gets downhill in a hurry. He'll spin out of tackles. Good pass catcher, but minus probably the pass protection. Really struggles in that area. Want to see him be a more refined pass catcher. But look, he's a guy who runs with an excellent pad level, a guy who has really good contact balance. I just want to see if he can get back to that form from 2018, 2019, shake off the injuries. If he does, then I think the future is going to be bright for CJ Verdell. He can move up draft boards quickly. Cameron Harris out of Miami, a guy that people aren't really talking about, 5'10", 210. And when you watch him play, look, he has 1,200 yards on the ground for the Hurricanes in his first 2 seasons, 15 touchdowns, 34 receptions. And like I said, 5'10", 210, he'll probably measure in probably a little under that. He looks a lot like Frank Gore. And here's the deal. Frank Gore, in his career, in his last season there at Miami, went over 900 yards, only had 23 career receptions, finished with 1,975 yards and 17 touchdowns. And look, he was 5'9.5", 210 pounds, ran a 4.58 40, just a 34-inch vertical leap. 3rd round pick of the 49ers, number 65 overall. And I swear, you look at Cameron Harris, and I think he'll probably run around a 4.58. It just feels a lot. You look at the stats, you look at a lot of this, and it just feels like Frank Gore. So, not saying that he's going to be Frank Gore at the next level. Obviously, Frank, tremendous career. The longevity is something else. But man, this is a guy. He bulldozes his way for extra yards. The power is absolutely there. Definitely physical. The guy who's going to put his foot in the ground and get downhill. Spins off tackles. Especially if you got 3rd and short, that leg drive to go ahead and fight for those yards. Vision to see holes. following his blockers that are especially climbing to the second level against linebackers, and that burst to get outside and down the field, runs through arm tackles. If you're going to be coming up to tackle Cameron Harris, you better make sure that you're bringing you packed a lunch, because you're going to be putting some work in, and make sure that you come and wrap up, because he has no time for those arm tackles. I think the route running needs to work on that a little bit. But look, they use him a little bit in the passing game. I think Cameron Harris just needs to continue to grind for Miami. De'Aaron King coming back from the injury. I think you might rely a little bit on Cameron Harris, getting him the football, getting him going. Again, not a burner by any means. He'll probably fall to the 4th or 5th round, but I think he has an outside shot at cracking the day 2. I think 3rd round's probably his ceiling with that. But man, if he has any type of a career that as Frank Gore did there during his time with after following the Canes going on to the NFL, then you got something special. Again, not saying that he's going to, but he just reminds me a lot of Frank Gore. How about Tyler Goodson out of Iowa? 5'10", 210, the junior. Look, 4 100-yard games, and Iowa was 4-0 in those games where he went over 100 yards. This was a guy, against Minnesota, had 15 carries for 84 yards and a touchdown in the first half. So definitely a guy that can get explosive, low pad level to finish his runs, downhill runner, hits the hole in a hurry. Shakes defenders. Penn State really shook a defender to get to the edge. Definitely not a game breaker with the speed, but he does have good short area quickness, good contact balance, soft hands in the passing game, gets up the field in a hurry after the catch, good route running ability as well. One of the things that I loved against Northwestern, there was a draw up the gut, followed his center, Tyler Linderbaum's block on the middle linebacker, broke a tackle, took off for a touchdown as well. He'll make guys miss in the open field, likes to use that spin move, keeps those hips low, very tight on the spin move so that he's able to go ahead and accelerate forward again. Goodson to me is kind of one of the forgotten guys there in the Big Ten. Mekhi Sargent no longer sharing the backfield with him. So I think this is the year that Tyler Goodson, look, especially if Spencer, Petras isn't really, moving the ball, throwing the football, you can grind out games there in Iowa, hook it up to Tyler Goodson. And that's the thing. Tyler Goodson, I think, is kind of the epitome of this draft class. A lot of potential is there, but we just haven't realized it yet. And so a lot of the talk is this guy could have a big year. This is a guy who could take his game and elevate it to the next level, but we just have a lot of guys that just haven't gotten there yet. And so, there are going to be some guys in this draft class who could decide to come back for one more season just because, there just isn't enough there that's really shown them elevating their game. One guy out of West Virginia you'll also have to keep an eye on is Letty Brown. 5'11", 210, finally eclipsed that 1,000-yard mark as a junior. Love the hands, though. 50 receptions, including 31 this past season. And so you're talking about 31 receptions in just 10 games. Had 5 games with 4+ receptions. There was a 4-game stretch where he had 20 receptions. 7 total games with multiple receptions. Running the football, had 500-yard games, 3 games with multiple touchdowns as well. I love the hands, his ability to secure the football and get up the field. But he does a good job. There's a swing pass, the ball was thrown over his head, able to extend for the ball and secure it, and then get up the field. Catching swing passes on the perimeter, able to make the first man miss and then get down the field as well. He'll drop his pads and run through contact, has that contact balance, fighting for extra yards as well with that leg drive. Stutter step there in the backfield, able to cut to the outside, avoiding defenders in the backfield. There was one play against Oklahoma State where he shoved the linebacker down at the line of scrimmage with that stiff arm, and then bounces it to the outside and gets off down the field. He's a guy to me that nobody's really talking about. I love the fact that he's such a weapon in the passing game for the Mountaineers. The 1,000-yard rushing season was a bit of a surprise for me. I really want to see him kind of elevate that game, take it to the next level, continue to show that power. Again, not a game breaker with his speed, but I want to be able to see him consistently hit that hole and show that quick burst. It's okay to be quicker than you are fast if you're continually getting to that hole and continuing to get down the field. 5.1 yards per carry this past season. 2020 was his first year kind of being the bell cow there in Morgantown, and so I want to see what Letty Brown can do in 2021. If he has another big year, he could be a guy that could surprise in that 4th round range, especially because he can be a weapon in the passing game. Rachaad White out of Arizona State. Look, first year there with the Sun Devils, in just 4 games, went over 420 yards and 5 touchdowns. If you just put on the film against USC and you watch him, there was a catch in the flat, made the first man miss, shook a defender on the outside, head of steam down the field for a 55-yard touchdown. Patient, waits for the hole to develop, hits the hole downhill, lateral cut to get into the open field, avoiding the safety as well. There's a hop after the handoff to bounce it to the outside and then accelerates down the field. That was really, it wasn't really a jump cut. It was more of a hop and able to get that run to the outside. Later on in the season, throwback to White, catch and gets down the field, spinning out of tackles down the field as well. Needs to watch I think that was against UCLA, because after that spin move, he was continuing to fight for extra yards, and that ball security, a Bruin defender punched the ball free. But patient, he'll wait for the kick out block and then cut inside that block and get down the field as well. Look, against Arizona, surprising speed. Again, 6'2", 195, own 7-yard line against the Wildcats, waited for the hole to develop, starts wide, foot in the ground, cuts back to the inside, and took it the distance, 93 yards. Surprising. I wasn't expecting to see that. He's more of a one cut and go guy. He'll probably make a guy miss, but he's not overly shifty. He's the guy, he wants to get north and south in a hurry. And he's one of those guys in the Pac-12 that people weren't talking about, but now he's on everybody's radar. A lot of fun to watch there in Tempe. Brian Robinson out of Alabama. A lot of people have him higher on their draft board, 6'1", 228. He definitely looks the part. Look, this is a guy who was the backup to Najee Harris. Only 274 carries in his career in 4 seasons there with Bama. He's now getting a shot. He's had just 12 games with double-digit carries, so there's not a lot of wear and tear to those legs. He does run with a nice leg drive to finish runs. Able to make cuts to make guys miss at the line of scrimmage. Definitely a downhill runner. Stiff arm, there's effort there, but not great. Saw him actually whiff on a stiff arm, and a guy was still able to bring him down. Did make a one-handed catch against Arkansas. Quick feet in the hole to avoid multiple defenders against Kentucky as well. There's just not a ton of game film of Brian Robinson taking on the first team defense of his opponents. Most of the time, it was him going up against the second and third team because Bama was way ahead and Najee Harris was sitting out. So I'm really curious to see what type of player Brian Robinson is going to bring to the table there for Bama. A lot of people want to talk about, hey, 4-star, 5-star recruits coming in out of high school. I've seen plenty of guys who are 4- and 5-star recruits who flame out, and guys who are 1, 2, 3 stars, no stars, end up having a great NFL career. So I really, his high school career, I'm not really worried about that. I don't really take too much stock into it because I want to see what he's going to do here at Bama. Now is his shot. Now is his time to shine. And, that's really going to be the big question mark. He's got some young guys behind him that are going to be really, breathing down his neck. So if he doesn't ball out, then, he could potentially end up losing that job. So it's really going to be interesting to see what Brian Robinson can do in 2020. 2 more guys to talk about. Actually, 3 more guys. We're going to stay in the Power 5, actually in Big 12 play. So Roderick Thompson, 6 foot, 210 pounds. 1,400 yards, just under 15 in his 3 seasons there with the Red Raiders, 23 touchdowns, also 62 receptions in his career, 60 of those in the last 2 seasons. 3 games over the 100-yard mark as a junior, all with multi-touchdowns, 5 straight games with multiple receptions as well. I loved his game against Oklahoma State. 17 carries, 133 yards, and 2 touchdowns. He started to his left, hole opened up back to the inside, foot in the ground, cuts to the hole, splits the safeties and the linebacker, takes it to the house, 58 yards. And that was on a 4th and 1 play. The vision to see the cutback lanes, very strong lower body, running through 3 arm tackles. Quick feet with jump cuts as well against Iowa State, bouncing off tackles to the perimeter on a swing pass. Really good hands shown there in that game. Against Texas, his first reception into the flat, a lateral cut inside the defensive back, second level spin move, runs through contact, ends up picking up 22 yards there, plays with leverage, some lateral cuts to avoid defenders in the backfield. He'll make you miss with that first step, so the lateral quickness is absolutely there. I think he's quicker than he is fast, although he does have that breakaway speed. Had a 75-yard touchdown later on in the season. Ran into the boundary to the outside, ran through some arm tackles, very aggressive, stepped out of another tackle, accelerated to break contain, and then the speed to go the distance. He's somebody who battled some injuries a little bit. When he stays healthy, this is a guy that can definitely run aggressively, can run angry, and I'm looking forward to seeing what he can do there for the Red Raiders. Like I said, decent passer, or decent pass catcher. He's got a quarterback in Tyler Shaw coming from Oregon. Want to be able to see what he can do in that passing attack for the Red Raiders. Also want to see him, see if he can pick up blitzers and be able to pass protect. That's one of the things that I haven't seen too much from him. So I'm really looking forward to seeing what he can do this year. He could be one of those sleepers. And then 2 group of 5 guys that we have to talk about. The first, Sincere McCormick, UTSA, 5'9", 200 pounds. Look, not the tallest guy, but definitely powerfully built. 13 straight games with a reception, and 20 of the last 21. 7 games with 100 yards, including 251 against North Texas. Had 10.9 yards per carry in that game and 2 touchdowns, 100 yards in 6 of his last 8 games. Against Texas State, had a 59-yard run on his first carry, hits the hole downhill, tremendous speed, was caught from behind by the safety who had an angle, but very sudden getting into the hole. In 2019, he was the Conference USA Rookie of the Year. Tremendous vision to see the cutback lanes, very good balance, good hands as a receiver. I love the straight line speed. I think that's one of the things that you definitely see. There is that ability to run through contact. He has that short, compact frame. And one of the things that you just kept seeing was this was a dude who would run into guys, bounce off of them, and then just keep on going. So you love to see that low center of gravity and that ability to do that. The vision to quickly cut outside, run to daylight, that vision to see the grass, and then he gets down the field. And once he's in the open field, he's so slippery, able to sidestep those defenders, make multiple guys miss. That second effort just keeps on fighting, keeps on working. And I love how as he's fighting through traffic, he'll be able to accelerate when he's in traffic and get down the field. And like I said, as a receiver, really good hands, can run decent routes. If you haven't watched much Roadrunner football, tune in and watch Sincere McCormick. I think you'll really be surprised at the type of player that he is. Look, 44 receptions in his career at UTSA. He's a lot of fun to watch. He's one of those guys that not a lot of people are going to be talking about. He may end up deciding to enter the draft, probably going to be a day 3 guy. But I'd love to see him come back and see if he can improve that draft stock in 2022 as well. And then the last guy that we're going to talk about is Xazavian Valladay out of Wyoming. 6 foot, 196 pounds, over 1,200 yards in 2019 as a sophomore. A guy who has his 28 receptions in his career. One of the things that I love with him, the spin moves at the second level, his ability to drop those hips, very tight turn on those spin moves, able to then regain and get down the field. Good feet between the tackles, very nimble to make a man miss. able to stop and start and accelerate down the field as well. Some lateral quickness to avoid defenders. There was a play that really stood out to me. I can't remember the team that he was playing against, but ran this really good angle route, cuts inside the linebacker, made a catch as the safety was flashing. So showed that the hands and the concentration. Collision with the safety and the linebacker, still hauled it in and got down the field. That was one of the things that really spoke to me when I watched him, was that ability to catch that football out of the backfield. Just like Sincere McCormick. There were a couple of plays where that guy got driven back a couple of yards by defenders, kept his balance, able to stop, regather, and still make some plays down the field even after some of those big hits. So McCormick and Valladay, two guys that you're going to have to pay attention to in the group of 5 in this running back class. So gave you a few extra guys there on top of my top 10. I think when it comes down to it, I think I had about 18, 19 guys. Actually, I may have actually hit the 20 mark in terms of the running backs. So a lot of potential in this draft class. Not really a lot in terms of the proven commodities. I think you've got 2 guys that have a chance at round number 1. Really, at the end of the day, I think Breece Hall is going to be the lone first-round pick. That's just going into the season. I think if he has another season like he did in 2020, the 1,572 yards, 21 touchdowns, also 23 receptions, then a couple more scores, 6 in the Heisman Trophy voting, 9 games with over 100 yards, back-to-back games with 185 yards, and a touchdown in every game, 8 with multiple touchdowns. If he has a season like that in 2021, I think it'll be all but a formality, in terms of him being a first-round pick. So that wraps things up for the running back position. Next podcast that we're going to release in a couple of days, we'll talk about the receivers. We've had some really special receiving classes the last few years. Are we going to see that same trend this year? We don't have a guy that we're looking at saying this is a bona fide, absolute top 10 pick like we had with Jamar Chase, Jalen Waddle, Devontae Smith, all in that conversation throughout the year. But we do have some guys that are going to be interesting. And what I like about this draft class is you have a little bit of everything. If you're going to be looking for a guy on the outside, we've got you with that. You're looking for possession receivers, we got you. Slot receivers, absolutely. Quite a few guys that are big targets, and not only are you going to have Power 5 receivers, man, you've got some guys in Group of 5, FCS as well, that you're really going to have to keep an eye on. Just as an example, Jalen Tolbert, a 6'3 receiver playing for South Alabama. He's really putting the Jaguars on the map this year. You're going to have to tune in and watch this receiver play. He has a chance to really move up draft boards. We'll talk about him. We'll talk about Chris Olave. We'll talk about Garrett Wilson. We'll talk about Justin Ross, who has a chance to be the number 1 receiver in this draft class. As long as he gets that clean bill of health, we've got a lot of guys to talk about. So, we'll make sure that we hit the ground running. And from there, we'll talk about the tight ends, the O-line. We'll switch over to the defense. In all, the preseason will have 9 podcasts released within a couple of days of each other, breaking down each of the positions to get you ready for the college football season. And then who knows, we may have one final podcast that kind of takes a look at some of those matchups in the different conferences, guys to watch out for. And then as we lead up to that opening weekend, we'll take a look at some of the matchups there for opening weekend. And then obviously when we get into that full slate of games, the games that you're going to want to tune in and watch, we'll have all of that for you as well. And then once we get through those games, we'll start talking about who are the guys that impressed, what did we see out there on the field, and we'll take things from there. So for ReadyForTheDraft.com, this has been the Ready for the Draft podcast. I've been your host, Gregg Schutze. Take care, everyone. Enjoy your week. And until next time, I am out of here.